Hi guys, we're here in the bakery section of the Pavilion kitchen. I'm going to show you dessert which is starting to incorporate apples, as apples are coming into a season this time of year. So for the next couple of months we're going to have different specials on the menu. So what I'm going to show you today is how to make an apple Tarte Tatin, which is an absolutely amazing dessert. And it's extremely simple to make. It only involves 4 ingredients. You've got apples, butter, sugar, and you've got puff pastry. Getting the right apple is very, very important. So we're using Granny Smith apples today. So with the apples, what you want to do is peel them and cut them into quarters. If you have the patience, prepare your apples a day in advance. If you can leave them in the fridge uncovered, they'll go slightly brown and dry out. You might think they're not okay to use, but the dessert actually works out better the drier the apples are, because the less moisture that's left in the apples, it makes the caramel a lot thicker, which actually tastes way more pleasant. So if you can, prep your apples a day in advance. So equipment wise, all you need is a frying pan. So step number 1 is that I'm going to put equal amounts of butter and castor sugar into an oven-proof frying pan. You could also use a casserole dish if you haven't got an oven-proof frying pan. So all we're going to do now is put the butter and the sugar onto a high heat, let it boil rapidly until it makes a nice dark caramel. So once you've tossed the apples in the caramel, just remove the pan from the heat and just let the apples cool down for 5 to 10 minutes so they're they're cold enough to handle. So what I've done then is I've layered the apples up in kind of a circular pattern, and I've put 4 or 5 apples into the center. Our next step then is that we're going to lay some puff pastry on top of the frying pan itself. So we're very lucky enough that we have our own baker here, and we've got our own homemade puff pastry. Now you can buy shop bought puff pastry, but if you can get your hands on like an all butter homemade puff pastry, it makes a way, way better product. So what you want to do is make sure that the circular disc of puff pastry matches the top of your frying pan. So I'm going to lay the puff pastry over the top, and then what you want to do is tuck the edges of the puff pastry down into the frying pan, and that's going to compact the apples and push them together nicely. So when the tart does bake in the oven, the apples hold their shape. So push it down like so. Now the next important step is to put some holes on top of the puff pastry. So we want our puff pastry to stay nice and crisp. As the apples bake, they will release a bit of moisture and steam. If that moisture and steam can't escape, it's going to cause the pastry to go soggy. So we're going to put in about 8 to 12 holes on top of the puff pastry. It'll still rise, but it's very, very important that we release that steam. And then the last thing we're going to do is some simple egg wash over the top. If you wanted, this can be put into the fridge now. It's perfectly okay for a day or two. And if you were doing a dinner party, you could just bake it just before your guests arrive, and it'll only take about 20-25 minutes. So what we're going to do now is put it into a preheated oven at 200 degrees and give it about 20 minutes, and it should be good to go. So we bake in the oven at 200 degrees for 20 minutes. So I'm just going to remove the tart from the oven now, and you can see the pastry is puffed up nicely. We've got loads of sticky caramel which is bubbling around the edges. So you want to leave this rest for at least 10 minutes because it's quite dangerous to flip it out with the hot caramel. So I'll let it rest, let it relax, and then we're going to flip it out onto a nice large plate and then serve with vanilla ice cream. And that's it. So we're going to turn out the apple Tarte Tatin now. So always make sure that you put a tea towel over the handle, especially if there's kids around, because that was in the oven. But it's cooled down now, so it's okay to handle. So I like to serve this on a nice platter. So what we're going to do is put the platter on top, put one hand on top of the platter, and then turn over the platter in the frying pan at the same time. Now, before you do it, just give the pan a little bit of a shake just to release the apples. So we turn it over. And there you go, perfect. So with this dessert, what I like to do is bring it to the table like this. I will dust some icing sugar over the top beforehand. And then generally I'll cut it at the table and serve it with balls of ice cream. But again, an extremely simple dessert. Butter, sugar, apples, and some really good quality puff pastry. And you have an amazing dessert to impress your friends.